Operation 85.
Who heads up Operation 85?
The national program called Operation 85 helps link families to crew members killed.
Joining me now, Kevin Klein.
Operation 85.
So, Kevin, you are not a professional genealogist. You're not a historian. You're a husband, you're a father, you're a small businessman. You're also a musician. I found that interesting. You tickled the ivories at a Trump property once, which I kind of like.
And now, here's the host of the SandTable, Kevin Klein.
Good afternoon, everybody. Kevin Klein here from the U.S.S. Arizona Operation 85, Executive Director of Operation 85, family member of a U.S.S. Arizona crew member killed December 7th, 1991 on the attack on Pearl Harbor. And I'm also now the host of Operation 85 and the SandTable. What is this? This is an opportunity and just another way for us to connect with, communicate, and continue to give education and information to not only the family members that are supporting us through Operation 85, but also many of the supporters. And this is a great way for us to bring on guests and give an opportunity for people to tell their story and what they're doing and how they're helping Operation 85. Today is kind of not really an episode, but we're just going to do kind of a prelude to what we're doing in the future. And we're going to talk numbers today. We're going to talk all those numbers on our homepage. And our first guest today is my good friend. We're going to bring him on here, John Hardy. John, are you there, buddy?
I am here. Thank you, Kevin.
Welcome to the show, my friend. I think Operation 85 is full of rabbit holes, if you know what I mean. And we literally could sit here all day and just go down a million rabbit holes because there's just so much information going on and there's so many things going on. What I really wanted to do today was kind of talk about the numbers. And really, if you look at our homepage and the numbers that we have on our homepage, what I realized is you and I have been working this together for 8 or 9 months now, and we probably look at those numbers and we don't think twice about what they mean and how they change. But, to the average person that might pop on our website once, twice a month, every now and then, or get those emails that we send out with those numbers in it, they may not fully understand exactly what those numbers mean. So I thought today you and I could just briefly touch on and stay on topic of what those numbers mean on our website and how they change and what our goal is. But before I do, I just kind of wanted to introduce you and kind of tell your story about what you've done. John, most of the family members in the last 7 or 8 months have actually most likely talked to you. You've been kind of the spokesperson and the front person for the family members to reach out and call. You're the guy that when our researchers find who a family member is, you're the guy that goes out and finds their phone number and gives them a call. Most of the time it's a cold call. They're not expecting it. But just tell us a little bit about you and what you've done and what you brought to the project.
Great. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm sort of the voice of the hard work that's done in advance of me getting any information at all. We have an individual who was at one time last year, I believe, the school teacher of the year from the state of Virginia, history teacher by the name of Danny Abell. And I can actually say that I wait for Danny's emails to come through. That gives me full charge to reach into what I use as some of my software tools in order to confirm telephone numbers, and then eventually hit the airwaves to try to get family members to agree to provide us with their DNA, which we then send in to either the Navy or the Marine Corps, depending on where that deceased veteran was billeted. So Danny sends his emails to me. I receive them. I go through the information. I do a little bit of quick research just to confirm that the family member in question is one that I can reach. The next thing I then do is confirm the time zone in the area. You certainly don't want to be calling what amounts to predominantly 70 and 80-year-olds at 8 or 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Tends to be a little too early for them. So once I get the time zone that they're located in and realize that it's a fairly convenient time for them and for me, I start doing my calling. That's a hit and miss situation. Sometimes the phone number is good and people pick up the phone, and then it's an easy sell, and it's a very good conversation. Could last anywhere from 15 minutes to a half an hour, depending on age, has a lot to do with it, but also the interest they have in the entire process that we're going through in the project. So,
right. And we've started out with, John, I think when we first started the project, there were 19 family members that had DNA, or crew members that were represented by DNA.
Right.
And we've hit a huge goal this week, which is over 400, which I know has been a huge goal for you. And as we talk about these numbers, let's bring up the website here, and that way we can kind of show people the numbers that we're talking about as we bring this up. And here's our homepage, and obviously the numbers we're focusing on, and just scroll down to our homepage, are these basically 9 numbers right here. Now, I'll quickly say the top 3, and then you can start explaining what the other ones are. Obviously, 1,177 are the amount of crew members that were assigned to the USS Arizona and killed on December 7th, 1941. So we had 1,177 crew members that lost their life that were assigned to the USS Arizona. That middle number, 105, actually represents the amount of those killed crew members that were recovered, identified, buried. We know who they are. And that final number there, 1,072, that is the number, even still today, of the missing crew members, those that were never found, never identified, never buried. Those are the unknowns that could potentially be in the graves and in the cemetery that we're looking at. And to be honest, I always thought, as a family member, and it seems like most family members have when we've talked to them, nobody knew about unknowns somewhere else. I always thought that my uncle was somehow, his final resting place was inside the USS Arizona. He was entombed there under that beautiful memorial. We never knew about these unknowns, and most families didn't. There is an estimate, John, of 85, and that's kind of how Operation 85 got its name. There is a potential of 85 unknowns that were removed from the ship, never identified, and they were buried in commingled graves, simply marked as unknown. And it is those 85 that we are trying to identify. So, John, if you can kind of explain, we've got these top 2 numbers. If you could explain what this 643, you and I say that a lot. It's kind of a magic number on this project. Sure. What is 643? What does that number represent?
Well, the DPAA has set a goal that sometimes it's very hard for us to understand where it came from. But in fact, they've set a goal that basically says to us, when you can get 60% of the families to agree to give their DNA directly to the Navy or the Marine Corps, we will then, we being DPAA, will agree to do an exhumation of those 85 graves that you spoke of earlier. And they will start the process moving in order to eventually identify these missing seamen and Marines. The next number to that is the 274 number, is where we are told we stand with them, as in that is the amount of DNA that has been received in the lab and that they acknowledge that they have received to this date. So there's
that's the amount of crew members represented, correct?
Correct.
And so out of 1,072, the Navy says, or the lab, I should say, really, the lab says they currently have 274 crew members represented with DNA.
Which could be multiple samples of family members, but that is the actual number of families they state as they have a crew member of those families.
Okay.
In their database, which represents at this point in time 42% of the goal of 643.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's great. So we understand those numbers. Now let's talk about these numbers in green down here, which are our Operation 85 numbers. The 782, that is the amount of family members that we have connected with since day one. We have their names, their contacts, their email. In some way, shape, or form, they are related to a crew member of the U.S.S. Arizona. So, John, let me ask you, that number of 782 family members we've connected with, why is that so large and not, the other numbers are so small, the 274 so small? Why is 782 so big?
Well, unfortunately, the Navy's capabilities within their laboratory are not sufficient enough to be able to use all DNA samples that might be able to come into them. So they are only looking for mitochondrial DNA or Y DNA from the family members to be submitted. Anything other than that is considered not verifiable or not viable to them. And so they're not willing to use that. So we have provided to them 400 family related members of DNA, which could be multiple strands of DNA, multiple individuals, by the way. So we could have two brothers, a brother, a sister, an uncle, or something similar. Now, that is part of that 782 number, but 401 actual sailors is what we're dealing with right now. Where we think we are, DPAA is saying, lab is saying, no, you're at 274. That's all we have in-house right now.
So why? So Operation 85 has 401 family members, or crew members they believe have been connected with family DNA or the possibility of family DNA at 62% of the project. So when that hits 100%, that means we've hit 643, correct? That's not 62% of the crew. That's 62% of the goal of 643, correct?
That's correct.
Let me ask you, why is the 401 number, Operation 85's number, so different than the lab number of 274? Like, in a layman's term, can you explain why that difference is why that gap is so large?
Well, some of it has to do with timing. So if I made a telephone call this morning and was able to obtain information from a family member, and that family member goes through the process and gives us all the data we need to supply to the Navy or to the Marines, and they've agreed to give their DNA directly to the Navy or the Marines, we count them as a family member, and that goes into that 401 number. That's the easy part. But then there are some situations where, for now months, potentially 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago, we contacted this family member. They agreed to give their DNA, and either A, they might not have received a kit from the Navy or the Marine Corps at this point in time, more the Navy than the Marines, because the Navy is a little slow sometimes on getting things done. Marine Corps seems to be much faster for some reason. So potentially that family member never got a kit, or that family member received a kit but did not send it back in the postage paid envelope that was provided for them, and did not finish the process all the way through perpetuity. So that's not in the hands of the lab. The lab doesn't count it towards that 401 number that we have.
Gotcha. And in all fairness, it's the Marines have, I think, 52 or 53 that are missing out of that 1,072, and all the rest, over 1,000, are the Navy. So yes, the Marines have a lot less to account for than the Navy does. And so this project really does fall on the Navy Casualty Office and the Navy's with the support. How, now, you've been here with me on the project for quite a long time, and you've pretty much were there at the beginning, only missed the first month or two when I was on my own. But how would you judge or say that the cooperation and the efficiency of working with the Navy has changed when we started this together 8 or 9 months ago and today?
Oh, dramatic difference at this point in time. Certainly a lot of room for improvement, but at this point in time, I would say the difference is dramatic. Initially, we would send the information into the Navy. They would take that information. Sometimes letters were left on desks. Sometimes they didn't have the staff in order to take care of what we were doing. So we wouldn't hear from them for weeks to a month. That eventually changed, and the activity level picked up dramatically, which was a big help. At that point in time, all they were doing was sending letters out directly to family members to confirm what we already gave them, to confirm that they were related to a sailor in such a way that the DNA was acceptable. So it took an additional period of time, 2, 3, 4 weeks in some instances, before all of this would be taken care of. Now what happens is when we send in a submission to them, and let's say it comes in on a Monday, that week sometime, usually very quickly thereafter, they make a telephone call because we've provided them with a contact number, something that's very critical. They get that immediately, and they can call and reach out to that family member. If the family member concurs they want to provide their DNA to the Navy, a kit goes out almost immediately. So the time period that was quite lengthy before has now diminished dramatically. That has improved the results. So the number of kits coming back to them has improved dramatically because their efficiency has improved.
Gotcha. So I see. Now I want to say something. If you look at the Navy number for 274, it says last updated on January 3rd. I actually did not update February's numbers because we went backwards, and so I was kind of upset and a little upset that we had went the wrong way in the month of February. Why did we go the wrong way in February? We hadn't put February's numbers up. I think why did we go the wrong way? And do you think when we get the end of February's numbers, beginning of March, do you think there's going to be a recovery there?
I do believe there's going to be a recovery. What transpired is we were given some information initially that we were told we could provide a certain type of DNA to the Navy, which was pretty much anything. So if it was a family member and the family member fit on the chart, and they've given us a chart to use as a guide, anything that fit on that chart, we submitted to them initially. Eventually, what they did is came back and amended that chart. And they've got a category called non-viable, which is DNA that they cannot handle and provide a match to with the deceased. So with the non-viable DNA, the last report that we had, they took a substantial number of family members away that we thought were viable DNA that was acceptable to them, and they no longer were. So they've reduced by a fairly good margin the number of family members that we could provide them because they don't have the skill set or the capability of handling that DNA and matching.
Okay, and I think once or twice or a few times on my emails and sometimes in some of these meetings, I've pounded the drum that we were going to hit 643 by the first quarter of 2024. Now, to be honest, since we've had a few setbacks with removing family members and removing crew members that we thought were identified, how do you think we are with the 643 number? I don't think we're going to hit the 643 by the first quarter, but when do you feel, and you've really got your finger on the pulse here of reaching out with family members, when do you think we're going to hit that 60%, 643 crew member represented goal?
Well, like you, I anticipated it would probably happen sometime in the first quarter, but we've gone through the entire alphabet as far as deriving some very substantial information on each one of the sailors and their current families if they're available. So we've gone through that entire A to Z list at this point in time. A lot of the issues are the fact that we're leaving phone mail messages and we're not really sure if they're going on deaf ears or that somebody's not responding to them. We have some other means and methods that we're going to use to go back now and reach out to families to get them to react. But I've actually now started once again back to the beginning of the alphabet, making a second round of calls to all these people. And the hit ratio is getting better. So we're starting to see that.
So I guess the bottom line would be these family members that we do contact, as soon as they get those DNA kits or DNA kits in the mail, they need to get them out right away.
Yes.
That's probably the biggest lag is some of the family members that just haven't followed through with doing the kit and sending it back. And at the very beginning, it was a much different process with sending out a letter, and the letter had to be returned, and then the kit was sent. And so we've kind of cleaned up a lot of that, those steps, and shortened those steps. And in some instances, the steps were so long, I think family members just kind of not lost interest, but it just sat on a table and got pushed to the side.
Well, what we're dealing with here, Kevin, if you really looked at the demographics of our database, we're dealing with nieces and nephews predominantly. These nieces and nephews are 70 and 80 years old, so they're in the 70s and 80s category. They're not some group of young individuals who jump at something and take care of it right away. Some of them forget, some of them put it on a counter and don't get to it for a while. So not only are we seeking new families to add to our 401, but we've got to go back in and then continue to contact those that we already got an agreement from to provide their DNA to make sure they go through the entire process. And that's additional work for us that we're doing, not the Navy, not someone else.
Gotcha. All right. So 643 is the magic number that we get. Hopefully the DPAA will start participating at that point and make this, the project and all the work that we're doing, a working priority for them. As of right now, I guess at the end of January, we're looking at 274 that are represented by the crew members that are represented at the lab. I think that was a little less, but we're hoping by the end of February, beginning of March, that number, you think it will be over 300, John?
My anticipation is that it should be over 300, yes.
Okay, great. So that means the 20 or 30 so that we lost, really, it's probably down closer to 255 at the end of January with all the family members that were taken off. But we worked really hard to get them put back on. So if we can get back over 300, I think that would be great as we move towards that 643. 401, again, is that number of family members that we have connected with. And if you're part of that family member, 401 crew members represented, and you haven't turned your kit in yet, please do so. Please get it back right away. Look for phone calls from the Navy. If John contacts you and we connect you and you fill out the information, or John submits you online, look out for that phone call from the Navy. They're going to be reaching out to you to get that kit. Anything else we can tell the family members about these numbers, John?
No, I would say they should start getting excited that it's moving in the right direction. Hopefully, they all have the same kind of comment to me. They're hoping they're going to be alive when this process really gets started, because they would like the opportunity to bring closure to their families. And most, if not all of them, say the same thing. If only my mom were alive right now, she would find this to be unbelievable that it's taking place.
Agree. And unfortunately, we've had a few brothers, family members that have passed away, that we've connected with, we've talked to, we've sent kits, and they've either passed away before they were able to send the kit in, or a few did the kit and then passed away and won't get to see the results of our hard work. So time is of the essence. That's why we're putting so much pressure on the DPAA to get involved, the officials of the Pentagon, to just not take this so lightly, that it is actually time that could kill this project. But the fact that we're doing what we're doing and we've done what we've done so far, I think these unknowns have a really good chance to be identified sometime in the next, I don't know when it's going to happen, but the work we're doing is clearly putting us on a path to have that done.
I agree. Totally agree.
All right, John. Well, thanks so much for coming on the SandTable. I appreciate your time today. I appreciate you helping us understand what these numbers mean. And again, if anybody's watching and their family and they haven't signed up yet, the website is USSArizona.Navy. You can visit us on Twitter at USS Arizona 85 or Facebook Operation 85. And we want to thank our sponsor of the show, List with Elizabeth, who, remember, pays all the costs for the show. We are not funded by the government. We are not funded by the DPAA. We all are volunteers, and all the costs are paid by List with Elizabeth. John, thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the time.